You know, I think Joe Strummer mentioned that the drummer is the foundation that the music is built on. Certainly Clem is a solid foundation. When, you know, Blondie was on a break or when they take time off between tours, Clem doesn't take a break. You ask him what he's doing in a week, he'll tell you he's in 4 different countries and 5 different bands. I can't imagine Clem taking 3 days off.
I don't think I've ever been rehearsing with him where he says, I think we're done now. What he says, do you want to run it again?
When you do something with Clem, it's at a whole nother level. This is the guy who brings an A game. Whoever he's playing with at any given time, he makes it seem like he's been with that band forever, and this is what he cares about more than anything.
It's so important in the modern industry to be collaborative and to work on other records, and I think he's managed to do so much great work.
He's a nice guy. That can take you a long way in the music business.
It's never been about how much, you know, it's always been about, is it fun?
He does it just for the sheer love of doing it.
I think he's always been that way.
You know, I get to play the drums along with all these fantastic artists, you know.
Iggy Pop,
the Slinky Vagabonds,
Nancy Sinatra,
The Split Squad,
Joan Jett,
Checkered Past,
Romantics,
The No,
the International Swingers,
The Empty Hearts,
Plimsolls,
Bob Dylan,
Wanda Jackson,
Steve Jones, Pete Townsend, Captain Sensible, the Ramones.
So this here is where our friend Arturo Vega lived. Arturo was a really good artist. Obviously, he came up with the Ramones logo and he designed the t-shirts. This is Joey Ramone Place now. Yeah, well, the Ramones were my friends and I was asked to join. There's no rehearsal. The first gig is Friday. No rehearsal, I mean, it's the Ramones. I mean, this is like gonna be an endurance test. I came up with the name Elvis Ramone.
Elvis Ramone, that was cool.
I mean, it really was the hardest gig I ever did.
Eurythmics, I think he worked with as well.
When Blondie stopped, I really didn't think that was going to be the end for me. I was spending a lot of time in the UK. One night I was at a place called Planets. This lovely young blonde woman was approaching me, and it turned out to be Annie Lennox. I met Dave, and we became friends, and I went to Germany with them, and we recorded the album In the Garden.
When Blondie started taking a hiatus, but I immediately snatched Clem.
It was a major learning curve for me, and it really opened my mind up a lot more to experimenting, using like milk bottles instead of cymbals, or banging on a big concert bass drum.
She's a world-class singer. Dave Stewart's a world-class musician. Clem went in and elevated the whole thing.
He became the sort of drummer that certain songs are actually connected to, like, you know, Thorn in My Side. The beginning is literally just me on a 12-string guitar. Then Annie comes in with "Yeah," and then he goes.
Eurythmics were huge all around the world. That gave him a whole other area of life.
Eurythmics. It was so brilliant. He was taking it to a different level. I mean, I think that really opened him up.
The craziest gigs that I enjoyed with Clem was the Revenge tour. We were like a full-on arena stadium band. It sounded massive, you know, and part of the reason it sounded massive was Clem's drums.
People were looking at me and thinking, how could this be? You were just in like this massive band. Now you're in another band, they have a #1 and you're the drummer. And it was like, wow, I guess so. I guess I must be doing something right.
It was really the best version of the band that I saw. Clem gave it a little bit more drive and a little bit more power.
I really enjoy the fact that I've been able to work with Debbie Harry and Annie Lennox, both very strong women, very creative.
But it all fitted together in this huge sound because of the players, of which Clem was, you know, responsible for a huge part.
Clem kept going, as he seems to have done all along. I mean, it's such a cliche, the hardest working man in show business. He's one of them.
On the drums!
He is an inspiration for all young bands, I mean, to be in one of the biggest bands of all time, and you still work hard.
He does that full steam ahead maniac drummer thing where he doesn't stop. You know, you can't actually get him to stop.
We're talking like an hour and 15 minutes. His drumming was just incredible.
Clem is one of those amazing drummers who puts out a lot of music, a lot of rock and roll, and he doesn't look like he's working.
I doubt that he even thinks of it as work.
That was my goal in life, to never have to go to work. That's why they call it playing.
You got ants in your pants and on.
Well, on this trip to Beatle Week, we did 5 shows with the Tearaways in the space of 24 hours.
You said something
Anytime you play with someone like Clem, it elevates the whole experience for you because he gives 110% on everything.
Yeah, I want to be like Clem, you know, I want to be in my 60s and dancing on stage and be smashing gigs.
And he always has a sense of fun about it. He comes smiling quite a lot.
He celebrates life. That's the person you want around.
He's still playing at the same kind of energy that he was in the 70s and 80s.
When you do perform with him, you're totally confident that he's going to be there and he's done his homework.
He does tend to take off at a rate of knots. You think it's always a bit too fast, but maybe looking back it isn't.
Personally, I feel as though the Ramones couldn't keep up with me.
And he's got an amazing innate sense of timing.
Which is why so many different bands use Clem.
When you're watching Clem play, you're seeing a very, very dynamic performer.
He's without a doubt going to play 110% every single time he sits by the
An auditorium, a concert hall, the Hollywood Bowl or CBGB's, he's just happy to play. He doesn't care where it is as long as he's playing.
Having my name put up on the wall along with many, many others was a real honor and surprising.
He came last year and he was invited back this year and that he should have one of these bricks in the wall.
Thank you so much again.
Oh, you're welcome.
I was saying they were larger than life anyway. Were they really this tall?
Clem is the first person to admit that he's a super Beatles fan.
You know, the Beatles really stood out. They were 4 individual rock and roll stars. I mean, this is like the whole city is one giant Beatle convention, really. It all kind of began with the Beatles for people of my generation. So it's pretty outstanding to be able to be here and playing in Liverpool and playing at the Cavern. And the Cavern being synonymous with the Beatles, but just about everybody you could think of performed here at one time or another. Can you imagine what it would have been like to see the Who play here on that stage? To perform here is really significant for me. You know, when you look around, when you see all the photographs and the memorabilia, it just kind of inspires me. I mean, you know, if the walls could talk, as they say.
Well, he's always listening to music as well. In the bus, wherever he is, he's got music on.
His enthusiasm for rock and roll kind of knows no bounds. He's deep into it, much more than me.
He's got an encyclopedic knowledge of early rock and roll.
The Kinks, February 21st, 1964. It's great that they have the dates. I'm really big on the dates.
What makes Clem stay current is that he's a fan.
Because he seeks out new music and he has an open ear for it.
With Clem knowing the Kooks in 2008, the fact he's listening, that's cool, man.
Playing the drums is like the ultimate fan situation. When I did stuff with Pete Townsend, with Bob Dylan, I'm like not just nodding my head, I'm actually accompanying them.
There's always going to be people who want Clem to play.
Somebody's got to keep the shit together and keep the beat together.
The International Swingers guys was, you know, all dudes from different bands.
Yeah, we did some of it at the Foo Fighters studio out in the valley.
They've been doing it a long time, but there's still conviction there. They're not phoning it in for sure. This is an International Swingers track that they did here called FBI. The idea was to capture kind of a live band, but it sounds great. I mean, those guys off the floor sounds like a record, you know. If you want, you can add Glenn Matlock to it. There you go. Sounds like rock and roll. But that's great. I mean, Clem's just, you know, as solid as a rock. It's just, you know, every time right there. There's a camaraderie amongst that kind of crew, and we kind of see it as people who kind of get it, what the whole music community is, and Clem was for sure one of those guys.
Clem really is a person who doesn't understand it when people don't want to just play. People are arguing or talking about this and that or whatever. We just play, and the audience loves it, and then afterwards you feel good.
I like performing. I like playing music with other musicians. I like the feeling of camaraderie, the brotherhood, sisterhood. When you're doing a show, it kind of all comes together. Sort of like a capsule of a relationship. All the different sort of feelings can come out that aren't necessarily expressed on a day-to-day basis, but you kind of can feel the feelings coming across from one another during the show. Most of the time, very positively.
The reason he's still around and playing just as good as ever and keep going is because he never stopped.
It's what you do, it's what defines you. If you say you're a musician and you don't play music, you're full of shit, basically.
He's actually much more orchestrated than you might think and much more thought out in advance. All of the drum fills are precisely placed, only they're not note scores, they're verbal instructions and reminders.
Real professional.
And then going back to the last thing I worked on with them, which would be Maria, it's the same thing. He laid down a blueprint where you could then mold everything else around it. So listen what he does right here with this little tiny fill at the front. It's going to show up again later. The little marching band thing there.
And I always say we got back together for love and money. It was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I was great to be reunited with them. But the one thing that I was determined to see happen was for us to make new music. I wasn't interested in just rehashing the old hits.
Well, I think Maria's a really good one just because it's nostalgic. It was done with a lot more thought and practice and years of experience, but it was played just like 30 years before.
The chemistry of the band is in full force. A lot of things have been happening that kind of very reminiscent of what happened back when we first started. Being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was a massive honor for me. I'd like to thank everybody that was responsible for getting us here tonight, both past and present. It's really amazing to think that the music had endured and the legacy of the band had endured to where time came for us to come back, that we actually had an audience for it.
That's what the impetus to put the band back together was, hearing a lot of young musicians referencing us.
This is probably the best version musically of the band, and we're really enjoying it. And now we've been together longer this time around than the first time around.